in 2026, SEO success is not just about visibility and AI. It's also about clarity. So making sure that your value proposition is instantly clear above the fold. So what you do, who it's for, and why you're different. If you can do that, then the traffic you're working so hard to bring in will actually convert. I'm Sara Fernández Carmona, and this is SEO in 2026.
Sara, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
So my number one SEO tip for 2026 is if your value proposition isn't instantly clear above the fold, your SEO efforts won't pay off. What I mean by that is that a lot of websites look good from an SEO point of view. So yeah, you're getting traffic, the rankings are there. But if people land on the site and they cannot immediately understand what makes you different, they will just leave. And that means that all the SEO work doesn't really translate into results.
So how do you articulate what you do so that the user understands what you're about in terms of a business and what your proposition is?
Sure. So above the fold, so just in case, just to clarify, it's everything that a user sees on the screen before scrolling, especially on your homepage. You need to answer 3 questions. So number 1 question is, what do you do? What does your business or product do? Who is it for? And why should someone choose you over the alternatives? And if this is not clear, especially in competitive landscapes, like, for example, insurance companies or some courses of very mainstream topics, let's say AI courses, for example, people are going to bounce. So it's very important that these 3 questions, you can answer them right away in basically like the first thing that users see when they land on the page. And the thing is that the data supports this. For example, Nielsen Norman Group shows that users spend about 57% of their time above the fold, and the content that is placed in that space gets 84% more attention than what's farther down. And the other thing is that people leave quickly and usually within 10 to 20 seconds, unless the page shows clear relevance and value. So yeah, without clarity above the fold, you're going to see higher bounce rates, weaker engagement, fewer conversion, even if your rankings look strong. And that's why in 2026, SEO isn't only about traffic or AI, it's really about clarity, trust, user experience, and making sure that your value is impossible to miss in those first few seconds.
So how do you define what's above the fold nowadays? Because there's so many different screen resolutions, there's so many different sizes of mobile screens as well as normal desktop. So how do you define it?
So above the fold is basically, it's the same concept across devices, but of course, when you design your above the fold section, you must double check how it looks on multiple devices, not just on desktop. And also on mobile, you need to check different screen sizes, also tablet, even if we often see that we're not getting much traffic from tablet, but all the devices, you should make sure that your above the fold is well placed, that you don't cut off any key element, and also that the information that you show on desktop is also consistent with the information that you show on mobile.
So is there testing software that you can use to actually establish what your website looks like above the fold and perhaps actually give you some kind of score out of 10 and different elements that you have to improve?
So there are tests that you can do, for example, usability tests, for example, the 5-second usability test, which is basically you show to a person your page and you ask them, did you understand what this page is about? And it's like a 5-second exercise. They look at the page for 5 seconds and you want them to tell you like, what do we do and what stood out to them? And if they cannot explain it clearly, it means that your value proposition isn't strong enough above the fold. And also other things that you should definitely look at is checking the data, looking at bounce rate, dwell time, conversions on those key landing pages, and collaborate closely with brand teams, user experience teams to make sure that it's consistent across the pages and that all the teams are aligned on this value proposition that we want to highlight right from the start.
So I love that. 5 seconds, and then the user has to tell the questionnaire what does the business do and what stood out for them. So if you do that, then if you can do that within 5 seconds, obviously it means that when a user just scroll to a website and then they're making a snapshot decision as to whether or not they want to stay on the website more, do business with that particular brand. And if they can answer that question, obviously they're more likely to do that. Are you saying that software is used to do that, or can you actually do that in person as well?
So yeah, this 5-second usability test, you can do it in person. You can also do it online. You could be sharing the screen with the user and ask them, but it is an exercise that you can also do offline. And also, I would suggest that you also, if you're not doing it already, that you use behavioral analytics. So scroll maps, heat maps, session recordings to see if people are engaging with what's above the fold, if they are clicking through. If you see that's happening, it's a good sign that the message is working.
Is there any particular example of a great business that does a value proposition really well that you'd like to share?
I don't have like a specific example, but I would say that it's important that you get rid of vague or fluffy headlines and that you use plain and benefit-driven language. And this could be something like, for example, market coverage that saves you up to 40%, or no-code dashboards for startup founders, one-on-one coaching with certified advisors, clarity, first and foremost.
Now, what's the measurable SEO impact from this? So, for instance, if someone clicks through from the SERP and just spends a few seconds on your website and clicks back, how do you measure the impact that that's likely to have, if at all, on future rankings?
So the impact that it's going to have is obviously you're going to see that your pages convert well, because ranking wise, you may be doing well, but conversions may not be happening. But it's important that you check, apart from bounce rate and dwell time, also the behavioral analytics that I was mentioning, how people are interacting. And also I will bring in qualitative insights like this usability test that I just mentioned, but also user interviews to see if the message is relevant, if it feels trustworthy, if people are understanding what you do and really what makes you different from the others. Something else, I would say that it's important that we just don't stop at this above the fold section and that we check the drop-off points in the user flow, because if people understand your offer on the homepage but get lost on, for example, the product or pricing page, other key business pages, it means that the clarity is not carrying through the user journey. So it's important that we make sure that users can move smoothly from that first impression all the way to the conversions.
Okay, I might as well use SparkToro as an example, because there's a few other people talked about SparkToro within this particular series of recording for SEO in 2026. So SparkToro split tests their headlines on their website. So one example was get instant audience research, do better marketing. And currently live, it's how do you get better ROI from content SEO, social PR and performance marketing, audience research underlined. So there's definitely a lot of thought gone behind what they do and the value. So it's articulating the value, but also describing what the business offers, I guess, as well.
Definitely. Yes. And I would say always make sure that you track the conversions rate before and after you make changes. Make sure that you have the data of the before available as well, so you can compare if it's working or not. And also something that I always highlight a lot when testing a change, don't change a lot of things at the same time, because you're not going to know what is it that is working and what's not working. So it's better to test 1-2 changes at a time and then see if this has an impact or not, and then continue rolling out changes instead of totally changing everything.
Now, there's different tools like VWO, Optimizely, A/B Tasty that an SEO, a marketer can use to do things like split test headlines. Do you have any preferred software?
A/B Tasty is also software that we could use, apart from SparkToro that you were mentioning. sometimes some companies have like their own built-in A/B testing tools. So, well, depending on the business, you may be more comfortable using one tool or another, but these are great examples for sure.
Okay. And are you suggesting that SEOs should become expert headline writers, or is this a skill set that belongs to content writers or other experts that they can perhaps outsource the business to?
I feel that we should work closely with content writers, copywriters, brand teams. We don't need to be those experts per se, but it is important that we ask ourselves these three questions that I was mentioning before, and that we ourselves are able to see if we understand, if we are providing that value, if the message is clearly understood, if we are clearly showing how are we different from other options, from our competitors, and if it's clear, if the proposal, if what we are offering is clear, or if it's confusing. But definitely we should partner up with these teams.
Now, I guess one big challenge, though, with copywriting, with trying to appeal to the reader as opposed to a search engine, is that it might be more difficult to incorporate a keyword phrase within your H1. Who should win? Is it important nowadays to incorporate keyword phrases within big headings on a web page, or should we trust that search engines now understand what a page is about, no matter what happens to be incorporated within H1s?
So I've often had these discussions working with brand teams, product marketing teams, and copywriters, because some teams may want more marketing headlines and SEO often, even if right now we are relying less on H1s and H2s, headings than before, and Google is able to understand what a page is about, even if you don't repeat that keywords here and there. I think it's important to find the sweet spot. Obviously, it's important that those headlines sound appealing, but that like the main keywords that we care about, like that keyword that for sure needs to be there, I always highly encourage teams to keep including it.
Now, does this have to be done for all the main pages on a website as well? For instance, does this have to be done for all the product pages as well?
Yes. And in fact, I had one recent experience with a pricing page where the word pricing was not included in the H1. And this page was not receiving any traffic. Like, it was a very well crafted page, and it had like all the options were explained, all the pricing plans, but the word pricing was not in the headline. It was farther down, but it was not performing. And we made the change, and then we started to rank, because what was happening was, so it was a SaaS platform, and other software comparison tools were appearing before the actual platform for the pricing of this tool. So it's still important. It's so that we shouldn't encourage keyword stuffing. It's some practice that we haven't done as SEOs for a long time. But for key business pages, these key terms should still appear in the H1.
In the H1, so not just on the page itself, definitely in the H1 as well. So at the top of the page, here are our prices, and that's going to be more beneficial, I guess.
I support this approach. It's possible that for other tools that have less competition, you may be able not to do it that much, or businesses that don't rely so heavily on organic traffic, which these businesses still exist. But my approach is that I would highly encourage to keep including these pages, but these terms. But of course, I didn't want to say it depends. It depends that we often say as SEOs, but I would suggest we keep including. For example, for pricing, this was my experience, and it really made a difference.
Sara, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
My main takeaway is that in 2026, SEO success is not just about visibility and AI. It's also about clarity. So making sure that your value proposition is instantly clear above the fold. So what you do, who it's for, and why you're different. If you can do that, then the traffic you're working so hard to bring in will actually convert.
Sara Fernández Carmona is a freelance international SEO consultant. Find out more over at sara-fernandez.com. Sara, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Thank you so much, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at SEOin2026.com.